This is the project we're going to do today. This is a memorial card that I made for my dog Millie, who passed away just a few days ago. And so I wanted to do something to honor her. And so this is the card we're going to make. Okay, these are the stamps that were used. We used Art Impressions number 5053, which is the little girl set, and that's this little girl here. This one is the 4868 from the Flower Set 2 from Art Impressions. The little dog is from Art Impressions 5016, the mini critter set. The pier is from Art Impressions 5057. This is from the boat set. Forever Loved is from the Just Right Pet Sympathy set. The Water for the Ocean is from the Stampscapes Nature Set 6 or 8. It's included in both sets. The letters that I made for the Millie here is from the letters from the We Are Precision Press Plus. And this is a stamp platform that is not readily available anymore. I had to buy mine actually from the UK. I couldn't find one for sale in the US. And the stamp that I have on the inside of the card is from Rubber Hedgehog. It's the Rubber Hedgehog Sympathy and Pet Loss. It's Easy to Fall in Love, and you can get this from the Rubber Hedgehog website. The inks that were used, I used Memento Tuxedo Black to stamp all the images. I used Gina K Amalgam Jet Black ink to stamp the sentiments on the card. I used Marvy Le Plume's number 1, number 15, number 55, and number 40 for different parts that you'll see in the video. The Copic markers that were used, I used G21, G20, G24, and G28 for the little girl's shirt. I used R12, R14, R17 for her jumper. I used R20 to add a little bit of blush to the dog's face. I used E00 and E01 for the skin. I used E31, E34, and E37 for the pier. I used E11, E15, E17, and E13 for the dog. I used E21, E25, and E29 for the little girl's hair. And I also used the number 0 colorless blender, and I used the Copic Multiliner 0.3 in the color sepia to add some detail to the dog's fur. And I used some sheer shimmer spritz for the sky and the water. And I used stitched heart dies to cut out 3 different hearts to stack them together. And these are the approximate sizes of the stitched dies. I am using a 5 by 6.5 inch card. This is one of the ones that you can get from Hobby Lobby. It's one of their standard sizes. I used foam adhesive squares, Tim Holtz blending brushes, Bristol smooth paper. I used the Bristol smooth paper for the sky and for the water. And I used Nina Solar White 80 pounds for the stamped images. And let's begin. Okay, I'm going to take some Bristol smooth cardstock and I'm going to cut out a stitched heart. And this particular heart is about 3 1/4 wide by almost 4 inches deep. And the paper I'm going to cut it out with is just some Canson Bristol Smooth. And this is the particular paper I'm going to be using. Okay, I've got some 80-pound Nina Solar White here. And I am just going to put a piece of plastic on top. And I'm going to position my pier approximately where I'm going to want it. And then I will close the positioner. I will check that it's straight using the grid lines on here, and it appears to be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it onto the plastic. Okay, next I'll take my Tim Holtz positioner and I am going to put it up in this corner. Then I'm going to position my little girl approximately where I want her. And next I'm going to use my new We Are Precision Press Advanced, and I will lift off the cover and lift off this, since we're doing rubber stamps, we don't need that. And just like in the other two positioners, I'm going to position this right in the corner. And then I'll put it down. And now I'm going to position the little dog about where I want it to be. And I want to position that dog right next to the little girl. I'm going to carefully kind of dab off the dog from here. Make sure it's pushed down real tight. And I am going to ink it up. I'm going to lift it up just a smidge. Okay, so now I have my Nina Solar White, 80 pound, and I'm going to first stamp the little girl. Okay, and next we will stamp the little girl, the little dog. And then we're lastly going to do the pier, and we're going to want to mask off the little girl and the dog. Okay, jut it up in the corner, ink up the pier. I'm going to color in the dog Millie with E11, E13, E15, and E17. And I'm going to start with a base coat of E11. And I'm going to use some multi-liner sepia 0.3 just to add a little bit of detail here. Okay, I'm going to take just a little bit of R20 to give her just a touch of a blush, and that was a little bit too much, so let me take my colorless blender and just kind of blend that in. Okay, for the girl's hair, I'm going to do, if that'll focus, let's see, maybe if I zoom it out, it'll focus. E21, E25, and E29. And I'll start with the E21. Okay, for the skin, I'm going to do E00 and E01. And we'll start with the E00. Okay, next I'm going to put some polka dots on her shirt with some masking fluid, just randomly placed on her shirt, and I'm going to let that dry. I'm using Molotow masking fluid for this. Okay, while I'm waiting for that masking fluid to dry, I'll color the pier. I'm going to use E31, E34, and E37. And I'll start with the lightest, the E31. Okay, for her jumper, we're going to do R12, R14, and R17. I will start with the R17, and I'm going to color in this little tag on the back of her jumper with the very darkest color. Then I'm going to go with R12. Okay, and I'm going to give that masking fluid a little bit more chance to dry before we color in her shirt. Okay, while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to fussy cut this out. Okay, I'm going to take my Marvelly Plume Black. I'm going to take the brush tip, and I'm just going to go over the edge very lightly. Okay, for the girl's shirt, I'm going to use G20, G21, G24, and G28. And I'll start with the G20. Okay, now I'll use my glue eraser to erase or remove the masking fluid. Okay, next I used a 15mm punch to punch a little mask for the sun, and I'm going to position my little girl on here, and then I want the sun maybe to be about right here. And then I've also cut some masking tape so that I can get where I want the ocean to be. And so I will just mask that about like that. And let's see how that will be. It's about good. Actually, I think I'm going to want the water to be about at her chin level. Okay, for the sky, I'm going to use some distress ink, and I'm going to use Antique Linen, Victorian Velvet, Seedless Preserves, and Chipped Sapphire. And so I'm going to start with the Antique Linen. I'm going to use some of my Tim Holtz Distress Brush. And I'm just going to brush at the very bottom here next to the mask. Next, I'm going to do some Victorian Velvet and do that right above the Antique Linen. Okay, next we're going to do seedless preserves and chipped sapphire. Okay, and now we're going to blend back down the other way. So back to seedless preserves, Victorian velvet, and antique linen. Okay, now we are going to remove our mask and we're going to change places here with the sky plate. And I'm also going to take my my Stampscapes water stamp, and I'm going to stamp in some water here. Now for the water, we will start with Victorian velvet. Will be tumbled glass. Next layer will be salty ocean. And the last layer, chipped sapphire. And now we're going to reblend by going with salty ocean, then tumbled glass, and then finally with Victorian velvet. Okay, we'll clean this off and remove the masks. And looks like we have a little bit of white here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my yellow one, which I was using for this bottom part of the sky, and I'll take one of my Fantastics applicators and put a little bit of antique linen on it. And we'll take off the sun. Now I'm going to want to lighten the sun a little bit, so I'm going to take some of the antique linen. Okay, and now I'll take the water stamp and I'll put a little bit on the top of that, and then I'm going to stamp it off, and then I'm going to in fact, I'm going to put this down so I don't stamp above. I'm going to stamp right over the sun. There we go. And I'll clean off my water stamp. Okay, and I'm going to take some Sparkle Sheer Shimmer Mist, Spritz, and I'm going to just spray a very thin coat, maybe a couple of spritz onto this. Okay, I really should have done this one before I spritzed, but I want to put a little flower in here, so I'm going to use this stamp platform, and I've got my heart pressed between here and up against here to keep it in position. And then I've got my little girl where I'm going to want her, and then I will just position the first flower where I'm going to want it. And then I'll just put the positioner on here and position that on there really well. And I'm going to take my Marvel Le Plume number 55 Iris Purple, and I will ink up the flower. And number 15 Olive Green, and I will ink up the stems. Okay, I'm going to use some 3D foam squares so that I can lift her up. Okay, and we'll get her lined up along here, like so. And so this is what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to take the fine tip of my Le Plume 40 brownish gray and very, very lightly I am going to draw a line where the horizon is. Just very, very lightly like that. Okay, and even though my Millie was a girl, I do like the blue background better with this. And I used the third one in to make this heart, and so I'm going to either this one, or let me see which one I want to do. If I do this one, the blue outline will be this big. I'll try this one first and see how it looks. So I'm going to cut a heart out of this blue with this die. Okay, I cut two hearts, the two next larger sizes, one out of blue and one out of black. And I'll show you what that looks like. And so I think this is what I'm going to use. And so I will start by putting the top one on the blue. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp her name. This is some cardstock that I've got that is, it's 10 by 6.5, and this is some of the pre-made cardstock that you can get at Hobby Lobby. And so I've got some letter stamps that I've put in here. I'm going to use some Gina K Designs amalgam ink, and I've got the letters Millie in this stamp press. Unfortunately, this stamp press is very, very hard to find. This is called the We Are Memory Keepers Precision Press Plus, and I actually got this from eBay and got it from someone in the UK because it's no longer available in the US, unfortunately. And so I'm going to stamp her name first on a piece of plastic to see how the positioning goes. And so this is going to go in here like this, and it looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty good. So I will remove the plastic, clean it off to make sure I don't get any ink over anything. Make sure this is butt up in this corner. I'm going to re-ink. Okay, the next stamp I'm going to want to use is a clear stamp, so I have to put this back in. I am going to use my We Are Memory Keepers Precision Press Advanced. And I will put this right in, and I'm going to position this about where I'm going to want it. Okay, and then I'm going to position my Forever Loved stamp where I'm going to want it, which is probably about right here. Then I'll put this down and capture the stamp. And I will use the grid line on the stamp to make sure it's positioned well. And then I will remove this so that I don't get any interference from it. And I'm going to want to make sure that this is butt in the corner. And I'm going to use my Gina K Amalgam ink again. Okay, for the inside of the card, I'm going to use one of my favorite sympathy stamps, which says, "It's easy to fall in love with a tiny bundle of fur, overflowing with life, love, and joy. But it takes commitment, integrity, and strength to be worthy of the faith and trust bestowed by such a cherished friend. Love alone isn't enough. So you were there, though your heart was breaking, to bring comfort and to do every last thing in your power to keep the promises your heart made to that tiny bundle of fur that you still love so much. Grief is the price we pay for love." Sorry, I get choked up. After all, this is for my dog Millie, who just died a few days ago. And so I will put this in position. Double check that this is going to stamp perfectly. I'm going to stamp it on a piece of plastic. Okay, and then I also want to do my Handmade by Terry Bruin stamp on the back. Okay, next I'm going to fold this at the score line. And then we will put this on it. And here is the finished card. Millie, Forever Loved. And the saying inside. And then the personalized handmade on the back. And then when I get Millie's ashes back, this will be stored along with her ashes. And this was made by love for my little Millie, who I'm going to miss for the rest of my life. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.